Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. You know how we do it around here. You could pick a topic, gather up some fascinating sources, and just dive right in.
That's right. And today we're going way back, like way, way back to ancient Egypt.
Always a good choice.
Yeah.
Now, I know when most people think about ancient Egypt, they think about, well, pyramids and pharaohs.
Of course, those iconic
Yeah,
images.
exactly. But we're going to dig a little deeper today.
Yeah, we're going beyond the surface.
Uh-huh.
We really want to understand what made this ancient civilization tick. Like, what were their core values? What did they believe in? What was truly important to them?
Right, because that stuff, it kind of shaped everything, didn't it?
Hmm?
Their culture, their society, their whole view of the world, it all stemmed from that, right?
Absolutely. And luckily, we've got some great material to work with today. We've got excerpts from this document. It's titled, What Was Important to the Ancient Egyptians?
Love it. Straight to the point.
It is, yeah. No messing around.
So let's dive in. What do you say?
Let's do it.
So when we talk about ancient Egypt, there's one thing we absolutely cannot ignore, and that is, of course, the Nile River.
You got it. The Nile. It wasn't just a river to them. It was like the source of life, the foundation of their entire existence.
Yeah, you see it everywhere, right?
Yeah.
In their art, their religion, their daily lives.
Everywhere. And for good reason. This document actually, it really emphasizes how the Nile's annual floods, they were actually a good thing.
Oh, really? I always thought of floods as being like a destructive force.
Well, sure, in many cases they are, but for the ancient Egyptians, it was different. The floods, they brought this fertile soil, soil that was just packed with nutrients, perfect for growing crops.
Ah, so it's like this natural irrigation system almost.
Exactly. It fertilized their lands and enabled them to produce abundance of food.
That makes a lot of sense. And the document, it doesn't just stop there, does it? It talks about how this dependence on the Nile, it influenced everything, like their calendar, their trade routes, even their transportation systems.
It's true. Their entire lives revolved around the Nile's rhythms. It's hard to even imagine a society so closely tied to a natural force.
It makes you think about their worldview too,
Yeah.
right? Like, did it influence their beliefs?
Oh, absolutely. It fostered this deep respect for the natural world and a belief in the interconnectedness of all things. They had a word for it, Mao.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a complex concept, but basically it represents balance and order, kind of like the underlying principle that guided their actions and beliefs.
Fascinating. So they saw the Nile as this life-giving force, and that shaped their whole understanding of how the world worked.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important aspect of ancient Egyptian culture, their gods.
Oh yeah, can't forget about those guys. We're talking about, what, over 1,500 gods and goddesses, right?
Something like that, yeah. It's a lot to keep track of.
Seriously. But were they all, like, equally important, or were some more prominent than others?
Well, that's a great question. While each god had a specific role to play, some definitely stood out. Like take the Hoth, for example. He was the god of writing.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him.
He kind of embodies their reverence for knowledge and record keeping. And they even had this special class of people, the scribes, whose sole purpose was to document everything, laws, prayers, historical events.
Wow. So their gods, they weren't just these abstract beings. They were connected to their daily lives, their professions, everything.
Exactly. And speaking of writing, we can't forget about hieroglyphs.
Right. Those intricate pictures and symbols, we see them everywhere in Egyptian art.
It wasn't just decoration, though. It was a complex writing system. They used it to tell stories, record history, capture their thoughts and ideas.
It blows my mind that these symbols could convey so much meaning.
It really is incredible. And it's not just the symbols themselves, but the way they were used. For example, you often see the Ankh symbol in depictions of gods.
Oh yeah, I know that one. It looks kind of like a loop with a cross on top. Right?
That's the one, and it represented eternal life, which highlights their deep-seated belief in the afterlife.
Right, the afterlife. It wasn't just an abstract concept to them, was it? It was like a central part of their worldview.
You got it. They truly believed that death was not the end, but a transition to another world, and they took it very seriously.
The document talks about mummification, right? The process of preserving a body as a mummy.
Yeah.
And there's also mention of grave goods, these objects that were buried with the deceased.
Yeah. They believed the body needed to be preserved for the soul's journey.
And the grave goods, they were meant to provide the deceased with, well, everything they'd need in the next world.
Exactly. Like, food, tools, clothing, even games and entertainment. They wanted to make sure their loved ones were well equipped for the journey.
So we've got this incredible connection to the Nile, this intricate system of gods and beliefs, and this deep-seated belief in the afterlife that influenced their burial practices. It's amazing how these core values really permeated every aspect of their culture.
It is. And to understand how these beliefs evolved and changed over time, we need to look at the broader picture of ancient Egyptian history.
Okay, so we're talking about, like, pharaohs and dynasties and all that.
Exactly. We've got this handy timeline here that outlines the major periods of ancient Egyptian history. You've got the Old, Middle, and New Kingdoms, times when Egypt was ruled by powerful pharaohs.
So, like, kings and queens.
Yeah, pretty much. And in between these kingdoms, you have the intermediate periods, which were times of transition and change, sometimes even chaos.
So to really understand ancient Egypt, you can't just look at it as one static thing, right? You have to understand how it evolved over these different periods.
Right. It's like piecing together a puzzle where each piece represents a specific time period, and all together they create this incredible tapestry of ancient Egyptian life.
Wow, that's such a great analogy.
Yeah.
So let me see if I can summarize what we've learned today. We've got this intimate connection to the Nile that shaped their whole worldview, a complex system of gods and beliefs, and a deep-seated belief in the afterlife that influenced their burial practices.
That's it. You nailed it. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Knowing all of this, how does it change our interpretation of their monumental architecture, their art, their complex social structure?
It's like you're seeing it all through a new lens,
Yeah.
right? You're not just looking at these amazing structures, you're understanding the beliefs and the values that led to their creation.
Exactly. It gives you a much deeper appreciation for the ingenuity and the creativity of this ancient civilization.
Well, on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Thanks for taking this deep dive with me. It's been fascinating. And for all of you listening out there, we hope you enjoyed it too. Keep exploring ancient Egypt. There's always something new to discover.
Absolutely. There's a whole world waiting to be unearthed.